eternal or not eternal. The laws of logic are eternal, then they don't require a cause. They aren't dependent on any contingent location like a mind. So that would support Platonism over divine conceptualism. The second horn is the laws of logic are not eternal. If they're not eternal, then that begs the question, when will they cease to exist? When will they cease to apply? And it seems like but this dilemma is a problem for theism because they can't really answer the first one, since the first horn favors Platonism over divine conceptualism, and they can't answer the second horn either.
Right.
They don't know when the laws of logic will cease to be.
Well, I think we're entitled to assume that the omnipotent, supreme, and perfectly moral God would create a logical universe. And if it seems illogical to us, it must only mean that we're not capable of understanding it. And, but it's still logical, it's still capable of being understood through reason. Don't you think?
Sure.
I mean,
But
if
how
you're
does
a
this?
theist, you have to believe this. Otherwise, well, the
But Claire,
universe would
how
be
does this?
meaningless.
Yeah, but how does this address the dilemma?
What dilemma do you mean?
The one that I just presented, either the laws of logic are eternal or the laws of logic are non-eternal. That's a true dichotomy.
I would say that they must be eternal, because the laws of God given to us are meant to be eternal and universal. And this is
But
how we're
when you
meant to
say
understand.
that, yeah, but when you say that the laws of logic are universal, but they are instituted by God, you are contradicting yourself. How could something universal that applies everywhere at all times had to require something to institute it? It makes no sense. Because if something institutes it, that implies that there was a time where the laws of logic didn't apply everywhere, at all times, at all places. So
Well,
choose one or the other.
I could try and answer the question by saying that, as far as we're concerned, um, these laws are eternal as long as we exist, because these laws were created for us. So I suppose there will be a time when we don't exist, which means that those laws no longer apply. They have no
For us or
um,
by us?
people to apply
Well,
to. And there
Claire,
was a time before we
Claire,
existed.
can I steelman your position? So you hold that the laws of logic are eternal, correct? That's what you said.
As far as humanity is concerned, yes.
Okay. But you also said that they were created.
Yes, they were created by God.
Okay, but how can something eternal be created? What?
Wait, you're an atheist too, Claire, right?
Yes, but agnostic actually. But what I'm trying to say is that
Not much of a difference.
eternal would mean
Okay.
eternal as far as man is concerned. I mean, we wouldn't particularly bother about
No.
a time when we didn't exist. So, and obviously God will exist for longer than humanity will exist, if it is true that He created us. But what will happen to the universe after we are dead, we're not that bothered with, because we find it unimaginable, and we're not really bothered, because the laws that are found in Scripture are meant to apply to us. So they apply only to us, and if we don't exist, then they don't matter.
Claire, something that's eternal has no beginning nor end. But if something had to be created by something else, then it implies that that thing had a beginning.
Yes,
That
but
you're contradicting yourself.
I,
You're saying that the laws of logic are eternal, but they were created. What?
Well,
Is
yes,
God
yes,
eternal?
yes.
But was he created?
No,
No.
no. He was the cause first cause, and he created everything, including the logical universe that we're part of, and we can only understand the universe through using our powers of reasoning, and this means the application of logic.
Are you in agreement? Okay, so are you in agreement that all finite things require a cause?
Yes, of course, it's logical.
Okay, okay. Can an infinite thing require a cause?
What do you mean by an infinite thing?
By an eternal thing, has no beginning nor end.
Well, but the narrative is that God is the uncaused first cause. Yes?
No, I'm talking about the laws of logic. You said the laws of logic were eternal, but they were created by God, and I'm saying that's a contradiction.
Well, when people talk about eternal and universal laws, they're talking about these laws applying to humanity as long as humanity exists. But we have to.
Actually, no, that's not what they say. They say that the laws of logic are universal. They apply to all existing things.
Well, I suppose the laws of gravity would still exist even if we didn't. But who would care after that?
Ethernet, would you like to take this one? Because my patience is like, dissipating real fast. You there, Ethernet?
He's gone.
Hold on one sec. Sorry, one sec.
He's okay. That was away from keyboard.
It happens. But you're talking.
Which God?
What?
Which God are you proposing here?
It's only
Which
it's
God
only
are
the
you
Abrahamic
proposing?
God. I mean, who else would we be talking about?
Theistic God.
I mean,
Just
why
in
would we be
general.
talking about any God that isn't the Abrahamic God?
But I don't see how this doesn't apply to all God concepts. We're just saying. So, Bo 44, Claire's position is that the laws of logic are eternal, but they were created by God. I said that was a contradiction, but she has yet failed to show how it isn't a contradiction.
Yeah, I don't believe that the laws of logic were created anyways. Because that's just an assertion she made there.
Well, to be fair,
I understand your contradiction.
To be fair, even if she's making assertions, the assertions contradict each other. How can something be eternal but be created by something else?
It can't be that's a contradiction. I understand that part of it. I just went a little bit further. I don't understand how something can be created and also was eternal. That doesn't make any sense.
Well, obviously, the word eternal, insofar as it applies to mankind, is only eternal as far as mankind exists. And once we no longer exist, we don't really care about what happens to the universe after that, would we?
But he should not say eternal then, because eternal is not dependent on mankind, right? Like just say the universe could be eternal, just universe would still be eternal, be it exists or not.
Yes, but we're talking about
Okay, I'm back.
about it in the practical sense of the word. Because obviously before man exists, then there all these sort of 10 commandments or whatever that it would apply to us if we if we don't even exist. But as long as man exists.
But you're just saying the laws of logic were created at the same time man was created? Is that what you're saying?
I wouldn't know. I think the physical laws of gravity and the speed of light and whatever. Well, those would exist before we existed, right? And they just carry on existing after we came into being, and maybe when we're no longer around, they would still exist.
Well,
but But we're talking about moral
What
laws,
point?
aren't we?
What point are you trying to?
What?
Yeah, but what point are you trying to make with the laws of logic? Like, what are you trying?
Well,
What are you
it's
getting at?
not
Like,
even my point. It's what's his name's point? The one who was talking before me. Um,
There's only four of us here.
yes, Darth's point about
Right.
the universe being
So what's the
logical.
problem? So what I'm trying to understand what the problem is here.
she said that the laws of logic were eternal but created, and I think she's just misusing words here. She's not explaining herself properly. I think that's what the problem is.
Well, for one,
I
when
presented
Darth was saying,
to
was it?
her.
Sorry.
Oh, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, I mean, all Darth was saying by saying the laws were eternal, he was using sort of an internal critique to theist worldview, because atheists know that the laws, the descriptions, are mind dependent. Of course, all they do though is point out that the fact that reality can only be categorized in like a sort of trilemma way, like it's a three-horn way, like either you have A equals A, can't be itself and not itself at the same time, and
Something is either
here.
true or not
Yeah.
true.
Right. So just categorizations of reality is all, but the laws, the language we use to describe the laws are definitely mind dependent. Same way with gravity. Gravity is a force. It was always there, but we came up with a way to describe gravity.
Well, but tell them what I meant by the dilemma, because that gets to the heart of the issue. And Claire already took one horn of the dilemma, but she also said that God created the laws of logic. Like, explain that.
Oh, go for it. I might botch it if I try to take
So there's a dilemma here. Either the laws of logic are eternal, or they are not eternal. Let's say true dichotomy. If they are eternal, then they don't require a cause for their existence. That's horn number one. Horn number two, if the laws of logic are not eternal, then the theistic worldview can account for when the laws of logic will cease to be.
And you're all atheists, and you're obviously playing with these ideas in order to deny the existence of God and saying it's all stupid. Ha ha ha.
It's an internal critique of the theistic worldview. Where it's a do you know what a reductio ad absurdum is?
Yeah, you're making
grant the premises that the theistic worldview has, and try to establish a contradiction between those premises that leads to absurdity.
I have tried to.
I don't see any
I have
problem with
resolved it by modifying the meaning of the word eternal in its application to humanity.
That's not how they use eternal.
Okay, well,
That's not how they use
carry on denying the existence of God, but I've tried to make sense of it to you, but that would,
So I have one big question, though, real quick. I have one question. Sorry, Bo, and I'll let you go. But Claire, I know you're an atheist, but do you really think in that case, does the laws of logic really come from God? Because you would have definitely a hard time using them if that were the case.
I'm agnostic, but actually I don't understand your question. I would have a hard time using what? If what?
The laws of logic, if they came from God and God didn't exist.
Well, we'll never know. Okay, I mean we're saying that here's a story. If it makes sense, you can tell it to your children, they can remember it. But talking in the way that you do just to destroy the system may be amusing to intellectual narcissists.
Well, you're an atheist, though, right?
Hmm?
You're an atheist, though, right?
I'm
an
agnostic. And I'm saying I see.
Now, are you okay? Now, there's a couple types here. Like, I could be categorized as an agnostic, I guess, if you say that. To me, I accept the possibility or it's
Lack of
God is a
belief
God is a
makes the
logical
laws.
possibility, right? So somebody could look at that and say that's agnosticism. I say I tend to use it as like I don't see any evidence for, but of course the logical possibility exists. I'm still an atheist. So how do you categorize yourself along those lines?
I'm an agnostic atheist.
Like you just don't care,
Sorry. What am I saying? I'm an
or you don't have any.
agnostic theist. I'm an agnostic theist. I'm saying that we can't prove one way or the other whether God exists, but God is useful, and we use his laws to keep us out of trouble and prolong the life of our civilization. That's what I'm basically saying.
Claire is similar to Jordan Peterson in the sense where she just takes religion to be pragmatic rather than actually true or rational.
but
That's why she
she's saying,
subscribes to it.
she's saying she doesn't know that God exists, but the laws
But
of
she's
logic come from God, and those she knows exist because she uses them.
and don't forget that the laws of logic are eternal, but they have to come from God. They have to what?
So I'm not trying to beat up. I'm just trying to figure out what you actually mean here. Oh, I can't hear.
Are you
Can anybody
asking?
hear me?
I can hear you.
Yes, I can hear you. Hey, strong atheist. Is it possible you can type that argument that you just proposed somewheres in the chat? Let me know where it is. I want to read it. You said something about the laws of logic argument.
Oh, that wasn't me.
That was Dorothy boy, me.
Okay,
I can write it down. No
Yeah, I just
problem.
want to see it.
Let me just
Because
get
I kind of I don't. Maybe I'm wrong here, but if God is eternal, and the logic is an attribute of God, then the laws of logic would be eternal also, right?
But how are you describing logic as being an attribute of God? I mean that's not saying anything.
No, but that's like if you're a theist, they're just asserting everything comes from God, right? Logic comes from God, gravity comes from God, everything comes from God. Right?
Yeah,
But you
that's
can't
what we do.
reason. That's a reason vis-a-vis assertion. I could just say logic is an attribute of man, and man is logical. So therefore, logic depends on the existence of man. That's not proving anything.
God, like okay, when you say God's all-knowing, God would be no, but if you say God's all-knowing or whatever, like or only like if you want to go like the Muslim doctrine, they say God only knows true proposition, whatever. God could be all logical, right? All logic comes from God, right? I'm not saying that's true. I don't kind of agree with that argument.
Yeah, but that argument still doesn't defeat the dilemma because it's not saying anything. It's just assuming the attributes of God and just saying this justifies logic being an attribute of God.
That's what I'm saying. That's all religious is an assumption. Like they can't prove anything. You can't demonstrate anything, right? Like all knowing, all powerful. They're all assumptions.
That's why presuppositionalism can be a two-sided coin. They say that the atheists cannot prove anything, but I say that they can't prove anything in accordance with their God. It's just all assertions.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%.
The whole point, the whole thing though here is that, Claire, just going back to what you're saying though, is that you're saying that God doesn't exist, but the laws of logic come from God. The laws of logic exist.
No,
How?
I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying, according to the theistic view, everything comes from God, including the laws of physics and the laws of morality, and the whole of creation. That's what you're supposed to believe in if you believe in God, because He created everything, and that He
Oh, okay. You're saying from the
he
theist worldview. Okay.
and that he created
That's not
a
really
logical universe, and also according to Leibniz, he created the best of all possible worlds. That's and he created it for a reason.
You don't see that the laws of logic are are just part of our minds. The descriptions are part of our minds.
But I mean, we are capable of seeing logic. We are capable of applying it. But for the purposes of this discussion, we would be, I mean, we could be asking, to challenge God's existence. Well, why didn't He create an illogical universe? And the answer would be, because He is omnipotent, He could create a logical universe, and obviously it's easier to be illogical than logical. But since the Abrahamic God is
No, that's not even true. I don't know why you just keep saying stuff without knowing.
I'm
Omnipotence means
hypothesizing.
it can do anything. It can do anything that's logically possible. So even if this being is defined as omnipotent by definition, that omnipotent being cannot do illogical things.
Well, I'll disagree with that, because if a theist claims is God is supernatural, then God would defy the laws of logic. He's beyond.
So how can he lift a rock so big that he can't lift it?
This is the problem with atheists when a theist says this, because if a theist claims God is supernatural and he's beyond logic, you cannot use logic to contradict him because he's beyond it.
Sure, I could.
No, you can't. He's beyond logic. When you lose a logical, sorry.
Yep. But he's at least within.
Framework, if you can't do that because he's beyond logic, you can't rationalize the unrationable. You can't logicalize the illogical. You can't do it. It's impossible.
This is all rhetoric. If God is beyond logic, can He both exist and not exist at the same time?
That's the problem that all atheists are making. I'm an atheist here, okay? I'm not a theist. But if somebody claims God is beyond logic, you cannot start using logical framework to try to discredit him. It doesn't work. He's beyond that. We cannot.
But everything you can describe within the three laws of logic should be perfectly fine to be possible if God is the creator of all forms of logic. Including the stuff that's outside of our quote-unquote logic. So he should be able to do it, not a problem.
Yes, it is a problem, because I'm saying this because if a theist is claiming that God is beyond logic, okay, then you cannot create logical arguments to refute him. That's just ridiculous. Okay? And I'm an atheist, and I don't believe.
He should be able. If he's beyond logic, he should be able to perform those acts, like creating a math problem too hard for him to solve it.
You could
Yeah,
not.
he could,
you cannot
but why
understand.
would he?
Like, we cannot logically understand the nature of God. If God is beyond logic, is supernatural, beyond the natural, we would never understand it. This is the problem, because we like our framework.
That's something I can understand, though.
We cannot understand the supernatural. We cannot understand logical contradiction. We could not understand that.
But that's something I can understand because I'm uttering it. I know what that means to be able to do that. Now I'm just waiting for him to show me.
When you're saying if somebody exists and not exist at the same time, okay, we understand that that's not possible for us, right? But if somebody claims that this a being that's beyond that, that's above the logical act, oh my God. The laws of logic is not something you can rationalize. You can't do it. That's the problem.
I don't see the problem.
Yeah, I don't. So if you say logic, then
I'm not saying that.
Okay, but I'm just saying hypothetically, if the theist hypothetically says that God is beyond logic, then that is self-defeating for their position, because they would have to utilize logic in order to make that statement about God to begin with.
I'm not saying that they're having a problem by doing that. I'm just saying that I'm not arguing for theists here. I'm just saying, if a theist claims that God is beyond logic, then as a theist, you can't say, well, can God exist and not exist at the same time? Because you're using logic for somebody that's beyond that. Doesn't make any sense.
Yes, but what I'm saying is, if he's beyond logic, he should be able to prove that he can act within these easy knockdowns, right?
Yeah,
show us.
this is like, whenever you ever see a theist prove anything, like I've been doing this for 25 years, they don't prove anything. They have either revelation, they believe the scripture, they believe the nature of God. No theist ever proves anything, or even demonstrate anything, or even rationalize anything. That's never happened 25 years since I've been doing this.
Quantum, do you have to say anything about this? Because apparently we have people saying that God is beyond the laws of logic.
Oh yeah, there's a guy. If you want to come to our group, I'll invite you. Any one of you. His name is Joel Nihilus.
CT says that too. He did that to me one time.
Who's that, Joel Nihilus? You know who he is?
No, Catholic traditionalists. I don't know.
Yeah,
if
there's
that's
a few of them. A few of them that claim that God's beyond logic. You can't use logic to rationalize God. And I'm like, I think that's complete bullshit. And like, I'm an atheist. I've been an atheist now for a long time. But hey, listen, I come across almost every argument on the planet. There's nothing I've never heard of. And if I hear a new one, I'm kind of impressed. So that's why I kind of like T-Jump when he created his moral argument about consent. I kind of really like that. It was kind of out of the blue. I never heard that before. I was very interested in it. But these days, I rarely hear something new. It's rare.
I got one for you real quick. I figured out the Father, God the Father, could create a rock so big that Jesus the Son could not lift it.
Okay. But
Yeah,
you realize, Bo, that saying that God is beyond logic is still a non-answer. Doesn't say anything.
Yeah, I'm not. Yes, and I agree with you guys. Like, I'm not disagreeing. It's like it's almost like
Yeah, he
you guys,
agrees.
I'm making the argument. I'm not. I'm telling you, when the theists make this argument, okay, and you're saying something can exist, not exist at the same time, and you're trying to counter a theist with that argument, it does not work. It's a ridiculous comeback because they're telling you that God's beyond that. Now, when the theist tells you that, you can use all the arguments you want against them. That's fine. I'm just telling you that I've come across this with Joel Nihilus. I'm not sure Catholic traditionalist, but I know another one, Catholic Reformed Catholic.
You know him because I used the one argument against him in front of you about God couldn't create a man so ugly he wouldn't blow him.
Say that again.
You were there when I said it to CT. I said God can't create a man so ugly that he wouldn't blow him.
No, I mean theists nowadays just they claim anything. Like there's a couple of bad ones in our groups there. Like they're pretty extreme.
You know what I say to that though is that like how can that renders like the laws of logic unintelligible to where even the theists can't even use them then. Because we can look at that state of affairs and say...
Yeah, that was then if they were to make that claim, then theistic presuppositionalism goes out of the air because they can't make sense of anything either.
Yeah.
Oh, like I say, it's oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I suppose I'm just trying to say, why would a theist say that God is illogical or beyond logic? It seems a crazy thing to say. You're kind of shooting yourself in the foot. I mean, if you're trying to prove that God is good
No, I think either way they shoot themselves in the foot twice because they claim that God is beyond logic actually affirms the first horn. You got to remember the first horn says that if the laws of logic are eternal, then they don't require a cause. That means that even if a God were to exist, right, then he would transcend logic altogether. It's not like logic would be dependent on him to begin with. So even if you made that claim that God is beyond logic, you would still be affirming the first horn of the dilemma. You wouldn't be denying it.
And also, Claire, this week,